At exactly 3:42 on a moonless night 47 nautical miles off the Iranian coast, a radar operator aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln watched something impossible appear on his screen. 4 surface contacts, no transponders, no identification, accelerating from 0 to 400 knots in under 90 seconds. That's not a speedboat. That's not a missile. That's something the US Navy had been warned about but never actually encountered in open water. Iranian cruise missiles, sea skimming, inbound, and the carrier had exactly 6 minutes to respond before 2,000 pounds of high explosive reached the flight deck. The operator's hand went to the alarm. The Combat Information Center erupted, not with panic, with precision, because what happened next would become a textbook case study in how modern naval warfare actually works. When billions of dollars of technology faces off against a regional power's most advanced anti-ship weapons, and the Iranians were about to learn a very expensive lesson about the difference between launching missiles and landing them. Let's rewind 72 hours. The Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group had been operating in the Gulf of Oman for 11 days. Standard freedom of navigation operations, the kind that happened monthly without incident. But intelligence chatter had been escalating. Iranian Revolutionary Guard radio traffic increased 340%. Coastal radar installations went active across a 200-mile stretch. Satellite imagery showed unusual movement at Bandar Abbas Naval Base. Something was coming. The question wasn't if, it was when. The strike group wasn't unprepared. Alongside the Lincoln sailed 3 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, USS Porter, USS Carney, and USS Mason, each one a self-contained air defense fortress, each one equipped with the Aegis combat system, arguably the most sophisticated air defense network ever deployed at sea. Between them, they carried 288 vertical launch cells loaded with a mix of SM-2, SM-3, and SM-6 missiles. Total firepower worth roughly $720 million, just in interceptors. But here's what most people don't understand about naval air defense. It's not about the missiles. It's about the sensors. It's about tracking. The Aegis SPY-1D radar can track over 100 targets simultaneously while guiding dozens of interceptors to different threats. It sees the curvature of the Earth by bouncing signals off the ionosphere. It detects missile launches 200 miles away by catching the heat bloom from rocket motors. And on this particular night, every radar in the strike group was watching Iran's coast like a hawk watching a mouse. The first indication came from an E-2D Hawkeye airborne early warning aircraft orbiting 150 miles northeast of the carrier. The Hawkeye's APY-9 radar picked up 3 mobile launch vehicles moving into position along the coast. Tracked them for 40 minutes. Watched them level. Watched them aim. The tactical coordinator aboard the Hawkeye sent a flash message to the strike group, probable anti-ship missile battery preparing to engage. Recommend weapons-free posture. The carrier strike group commander didn't hesitate. Condition 1 set throughout the group. All weapon systems energized. Aegis systems went from standby to active tracking mode. Every sailor not on watch scrambled to battle stations. The Lincoln's 4 catapults were already loaded with F/A-18 Super Hornets configured for suppression of enemy air defenses. Pilots strapped in. Engines warming. Waiting for the word. Launch detection. Infrared satellites watching from geosynchronous orbit caught 4 bright blooms along the Iranian coast. Simultaneously, the Hawkeye's radar tracked 4 targets accelerating south toward the strike group. Initial velocity 250 knots. Altitude 60 feet above sea level. Classification came back within seconds. C-802 NOR anti-ship cruise missiles. Chinese design. Iranian production. Range 120 kilometers. Warhead 190 kilograms. Sea skimming profile designed specifically to defeat radar tracking by hiding in surface clutter. These weren't terror weapons. These were serious anti-ship missiles capable of mission-killing a destroyer or crippling even a carrier with a lucky hit. Iran had used earlier versions to strike the Israeli corvette INS Hanat during the 2006 Lebanon War. 1 missile, 1 dead ship. The Iranians knew what they had, and they just committed 4 of them to an attack against the most defended naval asset in human history. The Combat Information Center aboard the USS Porter became the focal point. As the northernmost destroyer in the formation, Porter had the clearest radar picture of the incoming threats. The tactical action officer watched 4 red tracks crawling across the display. At them at closing velocity meant those missiles would enter terminal attack phase in 5 minutes 40 seconds. Time to talk was over. Time to shoot had arrived. But here's where modern naval doctrine gets interesting. The porter didn't immediately fire everything in the magazine. Instead, the Aegis system began a calculated engagement sequence. Track the threats, calculate intercept points, assign missiles. The computer identified optimal firing solutions for each track. SM-2 Block IIA missiles assigned to tracks 1 and 2. SM-6 missiles assigned to tracks 3 and 4. The SM-SIXS were newer, faster, more expensive. $4. $3 million each versus $2. $1 million for the SM-2s. But against sea skimmers at extreme range, the SM-SIXS active radar homing capability made it worth every penny. First firing solution computed. The porter's forward VLS battery erupted. 2 SM-2 missiles punched through the covers and climbed at 3,000 feet per second. Twin columns of fire and smoke. The missiles climbed to 40,000 feet, leveled off, and dove toward the calculated intercept point 62 miles from the ship. Their Mark 125 solid rocket motors burned hard. They covered the distance in 97 seconds. The Iranian missiles never saw them coming. C-802 cruise missiles don't carry sophisticated threat warning systems. They're designed to fly low, fly fast, and rely on surprise. The first SM-2 intercepted its target at 58 miles from the porter. Proximity fuse detonated 30 feet from the Iranian missile. Fragmentation warhead created a cloud of steel fragments traveling at 6,000 feet per second. The C-802 flew directly into that cloud. Airframe shredded. Fuel detonated. The missile cartwheeled into the ocean, trailing fire. 17 seconds later, the second SM-2 killed its target. Same result. Proximity fuse. Fragmentation cloud. Catastrophic structural failure. 2 missiles down. 2 still inbound. But tracks 3 and 4 were different. These missiles were executing evasive maneuvers. The Iranian launch crew must have programmed random course changes into the flight profile. Smart tactics makes interception harder. The missiles jinked left, jinked right, dropped to 40 feet above the waves. Sea clutter made radar tracking difficult, but not impossible. The Aegis system compensated, predicted future positions based on energy state, calculated new intercept geometries. The USS Mason fired 2 SM-6 missiles. These weapons represented the cutting edge of American air defense technology. Unlike the SM-2s, which relied on ship-based radar illumination throughout the intercept, the SM-6 carried its own active radar seeker. Fire and forget. Once launched, the missile became autonomous. It could hunt, it could adapt, and against maneuvering sea skimmers, that capability was essential. The first SM-6 tracked its target through 3 course changes and 1 altitude drop. The missile's onboard computer predicted the C-802's next maneuver and adjusted accordingly. At 44 miles from the Mason, the SM-6 dove from 35,000 feet and intercepted from above. Direct kinetic impact. No need for a proximity fuse. 300 pounds of missile traveling at Mach 3. 5 hit 400 pounds of missile traveling at Mach 0. 9. Both disintegrated. Debris scattered across 600 yards of ocean. The fourth Iranian missile got the closest. It penetrated to 32 miles from the carrier before the second SM-6 caught it. This intercept was different. The SM-6 came in from the side, matched altitude, and detonated its blast fragmentation warhead at point-blank range. The C-802's guidance system was destroyed instantly. The missile went ballistic, lost lift, and slammed into the water at 500 knots. It skipped twice before the warhead detonated on impact with the surface. A mushroom of white water rose 200 feet in the air, visible from the Lincoln's deck. 4 missiles launched, 4 missiles destroyed. Total engagement time, 6 minutes 12 seconds. Total expenditure for SM-2s at $2, $1 million each. 2 SM-SIXS at $4, $3 million each. Total cost, $17 million. Expensive morning, but compared to what a single missile hit would cost in damage, casualties, and international consequences, it was the bargain of the century. The Abraham Lincoln never altered course, not 1 degree. The carrier maintained 15 knots on a southerly heading throughout the entire engagement. Routine flight operations resumed 40 minutes later. Super Hornets launched for scheduled combat air patrol. Refueling operations continued. To observers watching from Iranian coastal positions, the carrier strike group appeared entirely unaffected, as if 4 anti-ship missiles were the naval equivalent of raindrops. But the intelligence collection was extraordinary. Every radar emission from those missiles was captured and analyzed. Flight profiles recorded in microscopic detail. Warhead characteristics estimated from debris patterns. The missiles themselves were likely C-802 variants. But which variant? How old? What guidance updates? Were the seekers Chinese manufactured or Iranian copies? Every data point mattered. Within 8 hours, a P-8 Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft from Djibouti was over the impact area. Sonar buoys dropped. Debris fields mapped. Fragments recovered by divers from underwater construction teams operating from the amphibious ship USS Bataan. Those fragments would end up at U.S. naval laboratories where metallurgists, propulsion experts, and guidance specialists would reverse engineer every component. The Iranians got intelligence too, but it wasn't the kind they wanted. Their missiles never got close enough to trigger terminal attack mode. That meant the seekers never activated, which meant they learned nothing about American electronic countermeasures, nothing about jamming effectiveness, nothing about what happens when an active radar seeker goes head-to-head with American defensive systems. 4 missiles expended, 0 useful data acquired. Let's talk about what it actually costs Iran to execute an attack like this. Each C-802 missile costs approximately $1, $2 million if purchased from China. Iranian domestic production brings the cost down to maybe $800,000 per unit when you factor in lower labor costs and less sophisticated quality control. For missiles, $3, $2 million in hardware alone. Add the mobile launcher trucks, fuel, crew transport, coordination costs, and intelligence preparation. Real cost approaches $5 million. But the strategic cost is incalculable. Iran just demonstrated it can launch missiles at American carriers. It also demonstrated those missiles get swatted from the sky before they pose any meaningful threat. Every American ally in the region watched this engagement. Every potential adversary took notes. The message was unambiguous: you can shoot, we can intercept, your move. The aftermath played out predictably. Iranian state media released footage of the missile launches. Triumphant narration about defending Iranian waters against American aggression. No mention of what happened after the missiles left the rail. No mention of the 4 smoking holes in the ocean. Propaganda for domestic consumption is easy when you control which parts of the story get told. American response was notably restrained. A brief statement from 5th Fleet acknowledging the incident. No inflammatory language. No threats. Just facts. 4 missiles engaged and destroyed at range. No casualties. No damage. Operations continuing normally. The understatement was deliberate. Why escalate when the outcome speaks for itself? But behind closed doors, the Pentagon analysis was intense. This was the first time Iran had directly fired on a U.S. carrier group since the tanker wars of the 1980s. It represented a significant escalation in Iranian willingness to risk direct confrontation. Was this a one-off? A test? A prelude to something larger? Intelligence analysts worked overtime piecing together Iranian intentions from intercepted communications, satellite imagery, and human intelligence sources. The pattern that emerged was concerning. This wasn't a rogue commander. This was authorized from high levels of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. The missile battery had been pre-positioned days earlier. The timing coincided with a major Iranian military exercise. This was deliberate, calculated, and it meant Iran was testing American resolve in a very direct way. The American response came 36 hours later, not with missiles, with presence. The Lincoln Strike Group was joined by the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower carrier strike group transiting through the Suez Canal 3 days ahead of schedule. 2 carrier groups in the same regional waters, 12 surface combatants, over 140 aircraft. A demonstration of American ability to concentrate overwhelming force faster than any adversary could respond. Iran got the message. No further missile launches. Coastal radar went quiet. Mobile launchers returned to base. The temperature dropped from boiling to simmer. Crisis managed. Deterrence maintained. Here's what this engagement revealed about modern naval warfare. Speed no longer matters as much as sensors. The Iranian missiles traveled at Mach 0.9. The American interceptors traveled at Mach 3.5. But the real advantage was tracking. The Aegis system saw those missiles launch, tracked their flight path, calculated intercepts, fired solutions, all before the Iranian missiles were halfway to their targets. The future of naval combat is about information dominance. Whoever sees first, shoots first, and hits first wins. The Carrier Strike Group had every advantage in that equation. Satellites overhead, airborne radar, ship-based sensors, data linking between platforms. The Iranians fired blind and hoped. The Americans tracked continuously and engaged with precision. Cost analysis: Iran spent $5 million to attempt one attack. America spent $17 million to defeat it completely. But those American missiles go back to the magazine. The ships return to patrol. The carrier continues operations. Iran got nothing except debris and embarrassment. The return on investment calculation is stark. This is deterrence in the 21st century. Not mutually assured destruction. Not threats of overwhelming retaliation. Just quiet, professional demonstrations that your best weapons won't work against our defense systems. And those demonstrations are worth every dollar when they prevent actual wars. The Lincoln Strike Group remained in the region for another 23 days. Flight operations continued. Port calls made. Training exercises executed. Business as usual. The missile engagement became one-line item in a deployment report. Routine defensive action. Nothing unusual. But for Iran, this was anything but routine. 4 of their most capable anti-ship missiles defeated without ever threatening their intended target. Millions of dollars expended. Nothing to show but radar recordings of their own missiles being destroyed. The Revolutionary Guard would need to recalculate what confronting American naval power actually costs. Some lessons are taught with diplomacy, some with economic sanctions. This one was taught with $17 million worth of interceptor missiles and flawless execution of defensive doctrine. And for regional adversaries watching from afar, the message landed harder than any warhead ever could.